All right, Cameron Carr. Cam had a solid combine. He's 6'4.5" without shoes, so he's 6'5", 8'8" standing reach, 7 foot and 3/4 wingspan. So really long arms. He's, I would say, kind of big for a shooting guard in that he has long arms, but is too like skinny and slight to actually play a three. So this is one of the guys we're going to talk about who is fairly position locked probably. Now, the truth is, like, some teams will play a smaller guy at a three, like, and make it work. It's not like out of the realm of possibility for his size, but it's not something I would personally, bet on much. Like, he's a shooting guard in the league. In fact, I actually think he's kind of a throwback shooting guard, and we'll talk about what that means. Cam is older. He's November 21st, 2004 birthday, which means he will turn 22 about a month into his rookie season. His rookie season will be his age 22 season. So he's older. He was technically a sophomore this year, but this is his third year out of high school. He played his previous 2 seasons at Tennessee. He barely played as a freshman. I don't really know the story there. Technically, he actually probably could have got that year back if it was at all related to injury, but I don't want to spend much time on it. But he barely played. He played in 14 games, played in 4.3 minutes, but was like a fairly highly touted prospect. He then was at Tennessee another year and got injured and redshirted that year, but was also like still not really playing, like only played 10 minutes. And he transfers to Baylor and he has a huge season. Played in 34 games, started all 34, averaged 18.9 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.3 blocks, and 2.4 turnovers. That's 49.4, 37.4, 80.1 shooting splits. Really just a really solid season, overall. He for some more advanced stats, he had an 8 BPM, which is good. Like we'll talk about Tunde a little bit later. Did not have that level of BPM. This Baylor team was pretty rough, and Carr was one of the bright spots. He was fairly efficient, 24.3 usage, 57.6 effective field goal rate, 61.8 true shooting, only a 2.3 offensive rebound rate, but a 17.6 defensive rebound rate playing as a 2-3 on this team is pretty good. 13.7 assist rate to a 16.8 turnover rate, 1.1 assist turnover. Not very good. Like, he's not a particularly, we'll talk about this, but he's a shooter and he's a good athlete, but he's not really like a quote unquote skilled guard. 3.9 block rate is good, especially, again, he was playing mostly perimeter defense on the perimeter defensively. 1.6 steal rate. He had a 38.3 free throw rate. He dunked 44 times. He shot 68% on 122 close twos, 47.5% on 101 long twos. Took 10.6 3-point attempts per 100, shot 37.6%, 205 total attempts. Against top 50 comp, the efficiency does drop specifically because he just shot worse from around the rim. He was way less impactful around the rim, actually shot better from 3, but still dropped off a little bit, nothing crazy. Block rate and steal rate stayed mostly the same. Assist and turnover rate both bumped up. So definitely some interesting stuff here. Coop, what stands out about Carr's statistical profile?
The crazy thing to me is how many rebounds he grabbed as like a 6'5" guy. I do think that a lot of that is because Baylor played short a real big man for some of the year, or their big man was like their backup big. James Najee comes in late in the year, but he grabbed a lot of rebounds and would push the pace a lot. Utilize that impressive vertical athleticism. Would not do it on the offensive boards because there was almost never a time when he was close enough to the rim to, unless he was like going for an athletic layup. But even then, he's not the kind of finisher where he's then in place for an offensive rebound. I thought he would be a better at the rim finisher, honestly, with how many times he, tried to dunk. He got a lot of easy attempts because of his gravity. Other than that, 3.9 block rate for a 6'5" player feels moderately outlier, for a guy who's not like a defense first prospect. Just some really interesting stuff here from a guy for like his first real season of college basketball.
Yeah, Carr is he's just kind of an interesting dude. I think the place to start, again, is with the shooting. he is a very prolific shooter. He shot a lot. I actually have his stats. I don't have his stats from his first 2 years of college basketball because it was all such small sample. But high school senior and EYBL, I have stats on. As a college sophomore, he was in 82nd percentile on catch and shoot shots. As a high school senior, 55th, and EYBL 38th. So he definitely got better, but he's always taken a lot. This year, shot 39.4%. And at a 59.2% effective field goal rate on those shots. His off the dribble shots fell off considerably. High school, he actually shot better off the dribble than off the catch, and EYBL was the same. And so, in a sense, it's nice. He converted his off the dribble shot making to off the catch, and in some like off movement. Baylor's offense was not like. I think Scott Drew is a really, really good coach, even still. Like, I don't really know what has happened these past couple of years. Truthfully, they've just been kind of under talented other than the couple like NBA guys. Like, there's just not a lot of depth on these teams. But they were not able to like get him, he's going to be in contrast to like Isaiah Evans. They were not able to get him like a lot of movement shots. But I also don't think he really profiles as that kind of shooter. He is a really he jumps super high off the floor on most of his shots, and it looks better when he does jump crazy high off the floor. He also has this really pronounced sway where his shoulders go back and his feet go forward. And some of that is that he wants to land on his left leg. He doesn't like landing on both feet. He wants to, and I don't know if there is an injury on that right leg. I don't know all the specifics, but it kind of seems like it, like he's kind of protective of his right leg a little bit. But major sway. But sometimes, then he just won't jump sometimes, especially if he's sprinting into shots. He just won't jump as high. The ball kind of has, a little bit of the KD path where it comes across his body off to the side of his face, which I think is fine. Aesthetically, it's a really pleasing jumper. It reminds me some of, Malik Monk. It's very just, pretty to look at. But I don't think it's, crazy in terms of its touch. I don't think he has crazy good touch. He's not really comfortable on weird angles. He's not really comfortable at all parts of the floor. He kind of has to get himself oriented towards the rim, and then he has to elevate enough to really get a good base for the shot, I guess. There's just something about it to me where I think he's a good shooter, but I'm skeptical that he's just this otherworldly shooter. And my concern is that that's what he needs to be to make it in the league. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think there's some good there. There's a little bit of shade and sharp to it too. In that he is a prolific off the dribbles jump shooter, even if it's not crazy efficient. He can go left, he can go right. He's not a very good ball handler at all. But he kind of does. He is able to hit one move and then step back or pull up. He loves his little drop step in, or not drop step. What do you call that? It's not like a drop cross. I'm blanking on what it's called, but where you the ball's in your right hand and you're setting up you're going to cross over, and then you just stop on your right foot and get into it. There's just a lot of there's a lot of variety in his off the dribble jumpers in a way that there's not as much in his off the catch jumpers. He spends a lot of his time just standing still at 35 feet. He's just literally just standing still. The off ball movement is not crazy inspiring to me, which is also a concern, despite some awesome moments. And so I'm just kind of left in this weird haze. Coop, I know you're more of a fan than me. What did you think about the shooting? And then walk me through kind of the rest of the offensive self for you.
I think the shooting is good, not great. I think I liked it slightly more than you. There's some funk there, but there's also just a certain amount of he's got some balls and he's putting the shots up. And sometimes in the NBA, what you need is to be able to, miss a few and just keep going, keep bombing. And I do think he had that. I think he could just sprint around the court, and he was in pretty good shape. And he could really leverage some of his stuff. He wasn't the best screener out of this bunch. I think the next guy we'll talk about is a distinctly better screener and play runner in a lot of ways. But I do think that he was adequate enough, and I think he understood where to be on the court most of the time. Although he would just tend to like scoot up and down on the wing a lot, which could kind of be a worry. And then you wanted to move on to just the rest of the offensive package. That's what we'll do anyways, because I don't. There's literally nothing else other than.
Yeah, I want to hear, because you're more positive. I just want to hear your takes on what you like about him to make you more positive than me, because I think you can convince me. I'm kind of up in the air on Carr.
I think Carr is just like the level of athlete where it is actually impactful. I think like he is so springy. He's quick. I think his reaction time is a little slow, but I do think a lot of that is he just doesn't have the reps a lot of these guys have had despite the age. You know, he's at 21, misses all of last season, only plays like a tiny chunk of his freshman year. I think he's a little bit behind developmentally. And I do think like more reps, more goes at it, he could really start to speed up and kind of simplify his role as well in the NBA. You know, took on like a huge offensive load. I think there was some connective passing that was really interesting. And I think the cutting was good. And I think it could have been better on like a real team. Baylor tried to do like some, you know, oh, we're just going to play 5 wings stuff. And it's like, well, the only guy who benefited was Carr, really, you know, because he's the only one who could actually take advantage of it. But I do think in like a real NBA spaced floor, he looks a little more valuable. I do worry that he just cannot dribble the basketball at the NBA level. He's not going to be able to. But I also don't think he's the kind of player where he has to do that to add value. I think he is aware enough of his own gravity to play this off-ball role. I think that he will shoot the ball well enough and be able to move well enough to be a real gravity well on an NBA team. And also, like the vertical athleticism, he's going to be treated like a true back cut threat, right? So he has to be accounted for all the time. Even if he's not this truly elite cutter, I think the combination of honestly, I think he's like a worse shooter than like a Jordan Hawkins, but because of the athleticism, the finishing on the inside, he is more of a threat to an NBA offense because of his ability to just speed backdoor or, you know, come off the screen. Even though Hawkins was just so much more dangerous, you know, he is 2-dimensional. And for an off-ball player to be, you know, even like most of the way to 2-dimensional is pretty important. And a lot of teams need a guy like this, even if he's only like a bench player. I do think like bench players with legit gravity are pretty rare. He's just athletic. He's fast. He's springy. And there's some funk there with like the block stuff. You can find ways to get him involved and bring value on an NBA floor. I think that's kind of the sell.
I agree with you that I think the vertical athleticism is really impressive. I mean, let me pull up my stats on this. I thought that he was a legitimately really fun vertical athlete. 85th percentile at the rim this year, 67.4% at rim, and not a bad layup score either. 60.7% on layups is not bad. That's a perfectly reasonable layup number. But he dunked 47 times. He had 5 self-created half-court dunks too. Like he can get him attacking closeouts. He can get up off going right, left, right. He can get up off his left foot. He's very versatile. I think he's going to be really good in like schemed actions. And the bet is that he can learn how to be a naturally better off-ball movement. My biggest or off-ball mover, excuse me. My biggest offensive concerns are, you know, kind of twofold. Again, I think the handle's really bad. I actually think he's a good passer. Like when he's like standing still or he is running in action, like I think he makes pretty good reads. Now he's wired to score, like he's not really looking to pass. The thing that limits his passing is that he can't dribble, especially in tight spaces. Like he's not at all a functional ball handler. He has to do these like bounce outs, or you know, he can hit one move, like, and he has a good enough first step to hit one move and go. He explodes out of it okay, but the handle itself is not good, and then he's also really weak, and he's already 22, and he also spent 2 years where he was injured, which in some ways is like, okay, well, you know, it's harder to work out maybe when you're injured, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're injured, you also should just be able to put on weight. Like, hey, you know, messed up your knee or whatever, like just eat food. Just go eat food and like get, you know, like it worries me that he hasn't been able to change his body composition at all in all this time. You know, physically, the person he reminds me of most is Isaiah Joe, who obviously has had like, you know, a really good NBA career. And he's way more vertically explosive than Isaiah Joe, but I don't like his feel near as much as I like Joe's, like overall. I think Carr is smart, but low feel. And that is like, you know, I've mentioned this. I hate the term IQ, but like I would say like his quote unquote IQ is fine in that like he can make decisions. He knows what the next action is supposed to be. But his ability to kind of flow in and out of things is just not very good. That's why he ends up standing still so much. That's why I think, you know, defensively, he's just kind of like making a lot of boneheaded mistakes. Like you said, there's some fun stuff. Like he really can fly for blocks, but I think he's really weak and he gets bumped off where he's trying to go defensively and offensively all the time. You can't really hold lines as a driver. And I think he is actively right now, like, you know, Baylor was like switching a lot and he gave up a lot of low resistance switches and he just wasn't impactful defense. Like he would go whole halves of games where I felt like I didn't feel like he did anything. Like he just kind of hangs out. And so what I think he is he's a gadget player. He's like I'm gonna run these sets for him to take movement shots and, you know, cut to the rim. And the hope I think is that he could in time be like a better transition player. Baylor did not want to run a ton because even though they had athletes like Carr and Yusufu, they had so little depth. There were so few guys that Scott Drew wanted to play that they were like slowing it down a lot. The hope is that he can be a way more dynamic transition player in the NBA, where he can make shots in transition, he can rip and go in transition, and he can be like a baseline cutter. All that stuff is there, but I'm just not sure what the value of it is. Like, Coop, sell me a little bit on like even if he is as and I'm also the other thing is I'm just not as sold on the shooting. Like if he's not a movement shooter, I'm not sure that he's super valuable. So like sell me a little bit on why this is valuable.
I do think like legit, um, legit shooting and like at least gravity, like the threat of shooting. I do think Carr, until he's the level of prospect where he will be like guarded off rip, even if the shot is not good, right? He's going to be treated like a shooter. Um, I I just think that guys who are this athletic who can also shoot are such a rarity in the league, right? And Carr, I don't think is the level of shooter you want him to be. You would prefer a guy who was less athletic and more of a shooter. Um, but I think that the big thing is you bring him in, you hope he's the level of shooter you think he is. And then he has this super clear, narrow developmental path where you're just like, dude, if you can like get the shooting to the next level, you could be the next Duncan Robinson, right? We can get you there. You will like demand so much pressure and, you know, you can very easily build towards that with this guy. You know, you're not talking about like crazy nebulous outcomes. You just bring him in and build in this super simple way, super clear way, right? He's a hard player to mess up developmentally unless you want him to be, you know, your secondary creator. Um, and I think that's something teams can do and teams can like get value out of. Maybe he's not going to be the best playoff player, but if he can shoot to the level, you know, if you send him to the G League or you just keep him around and work practices shooting, he could swing playoff series in that way with, you know, his combination with just his gravity. Even he could like shoot 20% from three and still be a plus, you know, impact guy because of, it is a lot of potential, but I think I've seen enough to where I believe in it developing at the next level. Right. And in an NBA team's ability to develop it.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Like again, I don't think you're wrong. I'm just it's tough for me with like especially defensively, which I kind of want to transition to a little bit more, to bet on these guys who I think are kind of low feel and are physically weak. It's just that's like a really tough sell for me. And so you have to be so good offensively. And I don't know, like to me, this is what Carr is he's a bet at a more athletic like Kevin Herter type, and obviously we've seen successful versions of the Kevin Herter types and unsuccessful versions of the Kevin Herter types, and I think Herter himself falls kind of right in the middle. I'm like, again, I prefer him to like Ament and Pete, I think, but he's probably like in that same tier to me, where it's like, if I draft him at 24 and I have a need for a gadget player, I think he makes the other thing is I think he's super like he has to go to a really specific type of team. Like he would not work on like this year's Orlando Magic. Like it just would not have been successful. He's got to go to a team that's gonna, run stuff. And I also don't know that he can go to like a true continuity 0.7 second type team. Like I think it's got to be more of like a let's run some plays, let's, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, you know, if any of the ball skills, the feel or the strength were better, I'd buy into him more. But with all three of those things being kind of lower, it's just I think I'm kind of capped out at how high I can have him. Where are you at with Carr on your board right now?
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's definitely got his flaws. He's not like a lottery guy for me. I have him at 13 at the moment. I have him below Burries, but I do have him above like a Darius Acuff. I do think that the value proposition there is a little stronger. And I do think that this is a kind of player that the right team could get a ton of value out of pretty easily. I think it's a hard developmental sell to mess up. I think he's talented. I think that level of athleticism is pretty rare in a guy who can like pretty real, shoot the ball to a pretty real degree. So I'm a fan. Sucks I couldn't convince you, but I totally get why you're at where you're at with him.
Yeah, and to be fair, like again, all those guys I'm putting in that tier, like I could absolutely see them having good NBA career. Like I think Carr, I like him again more than Peter Ament. Like I think there's absolutely a world that he's like has like a Malik Monk level career where it's like, yeah, like he's just now Malik Monk has kind of become more of a point guard. But I just, I also like I've lived through the James book nights of the world, and it's such a volatile bet at a type of player that I don't think like there is a ton of derived value from, I guess. Like I think the ceiling is too low for me to bet on the floor. So